Hi everyone, I'm Tony Rosales. I will be a fifth year in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. And today I want to start this talk by kind of going back a couple of weeks to this conference that I was recently at. To give you some context on this conference, it was a really cool conference in general. The whole idea is that they send just fourth year graduate students in chemistry in order to meet various people in academia and industry and various sectors of academia. So it's not just R1 schools, but R1 as well as PUIs. And so while I was there were many good talks. Part of the purpose was to be able to network with many of these people in industry and in academia, and also get experiences from many of these people, mid-level careers or senior careers in industry. And so there's this one talk by someone from L'Oreal, the skincare company, Kelly George, and she talked about how the career ladder is really more of a career jungle gym, which I'm pretty sure many of us have heard something similar to that at some point in our lives. And I think that is true, but she took a very different take on it. She did express that her career path has been very different. Typically in industry, she's jumped numerous times from various companies, probably about 4 or 5 different times in the past 15 years. But overall, her focus wasn't on jumping from these different paths and lateral movements between the careers. It was more about what kind of skills that she was taking in throughout that process. One thing she noted was that innovation is very key in sciences in general, which may seem intuitive. But she took that one step further, that because chemistry in her field required innovation, she also thought that she needed innovation as well. And so she, towards the end of her talk, she kind of brought up this type of picture of S-curves, where each career path really brought out different skill set that she needed to learn. So she entered in as an organic synthesis chemist, but then at some point she had to develop some biochemistry knowledge, and then other knowledge from different careers as well. And so as she went along these journeys, she would start off at the very bottom of one of these S-curves, right? Not having very good understanding of what she's trying to work, the space she's trying to work in, but then at some point she starts ramping up and then she starts plateauing. And then she pointed out that as soon as you start noticing yourself plateau, that's the time that you need to start figuring out how to innovate yourself, how to develop new skill sets that are going to be very important to just your career path and your life in general. And so to me that really resonated, especially thinking about my talk here for this symposium. And so here I kind of have my own description of my career path here at Notre Dame. Starting off with this red curve just being research in general. You know, you enter a PhD program, and although you have already a bachelor's degree, you don't really have the same understanding of what research is like. And so throughout that time, you start picking up these skills, these techniques of research, and you start ramping up. And then hopefully at some point on this red curve, you graduate. Hopefully the advisors will agree with that as well. And so at that point, we need to consider what are our next steps, typically postdoc, what have you. But for me, I always knew that leadership was something important to me. It's something that I was passionate about. But in the past, I haven't really practiced good leadership techniques, partly because I didn't know what skills to really use to practice good leadership. And so that's where this second curve comes in of my graduate education. And that's really leadership. And so that started off as my involvement with the Chemistry Graduate Student Organization, and eventually would be my practicum for LSTEM. And so throughout those initial processes, I was still very novice in being a leader. I mean, I've had numerous leadership experiences, but I didn't really take the time to reflect on them or learn from them or figure out what kind of techniques that I should carry forward. And so throughout this LSTEM part, throughout the LSTEM fellowship, I would say at this point of the curve, all of us are really just ramping up. We're really learning these skills, developing them into our own leadership style. And at some point, we're going to come to a plateau, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're done with leadership. That just means we've harnessed the correct skills to be able to be good leaders and keep innovating the world around us. And so I would say a lot of that ramping up came down to really these 3 elements of LSTEM, at least that they were important to me. And the first one was the DISC assessments, as you've already seen numerous pictures of. But I thought that was very important because it taught me how how I interact with other people, how I want to interact with other people, and how other people want or should be interacted by with me. Additionally, probably one of the bigger takeaways was understanding the balance that I need to have with not only my intellect and my ability to solve problems, but also just the sensitivity to emotions, not only my own emotions, but emotions of others as well. And so then following that, Andrew and I gave a workshop in values and really defining our values. And this was really the first time I took a real close look at what my values were and how I tried portraying them in my real life. And so they're the top 5 values that I have. But I think this is rather important because now having that, I've been able to take a closer look in terms of what I want to do with my life, with my career, and how I want to apply those same values throughout my entire leadership journey. And so, as I said a little bit ago, although we are done with developing a lot of these skills, it doesn't mean we're done with leadership. It just means that it's time to innovate ourselves in bigger and better ways. So I'd like to share the same sentiments of the rest of my cohort, thank all of the leaders of the LSTEM and then the rest of the cohort. Thank you, everyone.